while we were out canvassing the neighborhood for the petitions in regard to the speed bumps and the speed tables, several of us that are here tonight were out doing that. We didn't get 5 words out when we were talking about asking for signatures on these petitions for the speed bumps or speed tables, and people were basically grabbing the pens out of our hands. That's how desperate this community wants these speed bumps or speed tables. We need something done. Someone is going to get hit. Vehicles have been hit because people are losing control coming around the curves. Trees have been obliterated. Vehicles, again, it's not going to take time before it is a child or an adult even, or another dog. We can't continue this. Quarry Park is a beautiful community, and I think it does enhance Reynoldsburg as a whole. However, it is not someplace I would recommend anyone live because of the speed issue. We're not exclusive, we know that, but we need something done before something tragic happens. Thank you.
Leslie,
Yes, sir.
did you find that more people are looking at speed tables and sidewalk raised versus speed bumps? Because I believe the speed bumps seem to be the item that generates the most noise, or the sound issue, where the tables and the sidewalk raised seem to be more of a preference. Am I correct on what of that, or what did you find?
Great question, Fred. We didn't address the raised crosswalks. That wasn't part of what we were trying to do. However, we did hear that speed tables were more preferred. When we were out collecting the signatures, there were 3 boxes, or 3 columns, if you will, on the petitions. One, the first column that you come to is speed table, then speed bump, then neither. Of course, people who didn't want either didn't sign. Why waste anyone's time, right? But what we were telling folks to do, if you have no preference, check both. There were several that checked speed tables exclusively. So if you add them up, and I didn't do that, so forgive me, I did not come prepared in that area, you will find that the table is more preferred than the speed bump. What I've heard from other communities is that the speed table is less likely to affect the property value versus the speed bump. So obviously, no one wants to lose property value. That's foolish. Speed table would be the preference in that area based on the communication I've had from folks outside of the Reynoldsburg area, because that's what they went with based on the property value issue.
And I know some people would want to ask you directly, do you have a problem having a speed table in front of your home?
I would welcome it anytime. I would definitely welcome it, because if it costs us losing a little bit of sleep to save someone's life, I'm certainly approving of that. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. We don't know if we will. We pray to God we won't, but it's not worth the chance. Any other questions?
And I believe your husband is a firefighter?
My husband is a firefighter.
Does he want to say anything about the fire response
Yeah.
or emergency response portion?
He is itching to speak to you guys about the emergency response, so I'll pass the stand to Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
It'll actually be good to hear, because all we have is statistics to go on.
Right. Morning, or afternoon, I guess, evening. I'm Kevin Wade. I live in the same house she does, because she lets me. I've been passed on Priestley Drive at high rates of speed. I have had the police called on me twice because I've yelled at people. I have almost been hit multiple times backing into my driveway because people don't care. They don't. When it comes to fire department, I drive a medic. I drive a big fire truck. I will gladly slow down to get over that speed bump or speed table, because my response time is not going to be affected by a second or two. But it's easier to slow down for those than to have to scream down to children because you're holding a kid's life in your hands. I've done it quite a few times in my 20 years. I don't like it. And I'm sure, when you've had to tell the mom or dad, hey, I'm sorry, your kid's dead, not a good feeling. We'd much rather have those seconds that are taking us to get over there, and it's seconds. The average response time in, actually, the nation is 4 to 6 minutes. A couple seconds in there is not going to make any difference.
The statistic I've seen is 7 to 10 seconds based on whether it's a speed table or a speed bump.
Mhm.
Depending upon how many there are. Yeah.
I know that we track all of our times from the time we leave the department to the time we get there. And where I work is, we're 2 to 4 minutes to response time. From the time we leave the station to the time we're on scene is 2 to 4 minutes. So we're slightly below the average, but 4 to 6 minutes is not a big deal. We don't care. We would rather do that, slow down for those, shave a couple seconds. We can make it up somewhere else. We get to a big road, we can make up the time. It's a couple of seconds that isn't going to hurt, and rather than to have to go down to Children's and just try and save that life. I'm a big dog lover. I will go ballistic if one of my dogs gets hit, because it's the same car. Well, I can't say it's the same cars, but it's a problem. It needs to be fixed. We've lived there for 4 years, and for 4 years, I've been constantly yelling at people. I've been scolded by the police for rolling skateboards out there, but something's got to happen. I'd much rather lose my kid's skateboard and spend $20 to buy him a new one than have to, whatever.
In your section, how many speed tables would you believe would be appropriate?
Honestly, one every 50 feet, but that's me. That's sarcasm.
Realistically,
I don't know, 4
from Wagoner
from
to
Wagner.
the end of Quarry Park.
I'd say probably 4 to 6. That'd probably be good. Yeah, that'd probably be good, just as a standard. I mean, I don't know what the regulation is to how many we can have in there, but if we can meet the maximum regulation, that'd be great. I'll slow down. I have a low-profile car. I drive a Camaro. It's low profile. Might scratch it a little bit. I'd rather have that than just cars flying by me. So I feel
Thank
the
you,
pain
Ken.
with the speed bumps and the noise, but I'd rather have it.
Thank you. And were you more table or speed bump?
It doesn't matter to me. I don't mind. Tables are nice. Bumps are a little more noisy, but, either one. It doesn't
Thank you,
matter.
sir. Thank
I
you.
sleep hard, so she's the one that doesn't sleep, so I'm good.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Next. Please state your name and
Hi, I'm Chris Mabry. I live on Quarry Park. Let's see here. So just a couple things. One, we have a massive deer problem over in our area. So with the cars going 50, 60 miles an hour, I'm surprised we haven't had a couple of dead ones already out there. There was a motorcycle accident on Quarry Park. I sat there and watched her. She was going about 50 miles an hour down Quarry Park, tried to make a turn onto Sandrock, and she skid about 2 houses down. I have a 3-year-old son. He likes to just take off and run, like most of them do. And I've seen him almost get out to the street before we caught him. But there used to be 3 children that lived across the street from us. They moved away last year. But I would sit in my office, and I would have PTSD basically every day while these kids ran out in the street in between these cars going 50, 60 miles an hour. I mean, it was a terrible expense. Just to piggyback off what Leslie said, the response for the petition that's probably the easiest sell I've ever had to make. Out of the 196 houses, 128 said yes, that they want. I think the difference between speed tables and speed bumps is going to be minimal. Like there was nobody on my petitions that said they didn't want both. So I think you're going to have a minimal the difference between speed bumps and speed tables. There were 58 houses that did not open their door, one way or the other, and we only had 10 people who said no. Out of the people who actually answered their doors, we only had 10 people who said they didn't want them. So I think it's an overwhelming response for the whole neighborhood, not just the 2 streets, but all the streets want them.
so you're saying each of the 4 or 5 streets that are in Quarry Park were requesting to have something on their specific street in
Yes.
addition to Quarry Park and Priestley.
Of the was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 streets we have, 5 had over 60% response in terms of yes, they wanted it. The 6th one did not, but they only got hit with the signatures one time. We didn't actually go back and hit them twice at the last street because it was near the deadline. But The average, I think, for the whole neighborhood was 64% actually wanted speed bumps, which is, a pretty good number in terms of turnout.
It was,
We had a couple of questions about how you arrived at some of these conclusions, because when we went through and verified addresses, those are not the numbers we came up with in that regard. We put it by house, so if there were two people living in the house, that's not two separate votes. It's
No,
by,
but
it's per.
one person per house.
So unless maybe there was one petition slip that was not turned in, we can go over the numbers specifically. Priestley, we had 41 of 95 houses with signatures at a 43% approval rate. Windrift, 13 of 22 for 59. Slate Park, 14 of 23 for 60. Sandrock, 20 of 33 for 60. Quarry Park, 13 of 20 for 65. And Marble Park was actually the lowest at 10 for 28. Those are the numbers that when we reviewed them. Now, obviously, it doesn't change anything specifically as the overall thing, but the one that concerned me was specifically Priestley, considering that is the one that is the most major of roads. I don't know if that's the one that only got hit one time or if it needed to be hit again or something like that to see that percentage higher. Otherwise, the percentages are fine, and I think we can move forward with this.
Yeah.
But that was the one that most concerned me, that the most major road had the fewest responses. And again, if you went one time or even two times, not everybody's always home, and if the Buckeyes were on and all sorts of other different factors with that. Yes? Okay. And please keep in mind, I'm not opposed in any way, shape, or I was just wanting to make sure that I have my numbers correct all the way across.
We appreciate that.
Absolutely, thank you. So on Priestley, we did go out, I myself went out a total of 4 times, various times of the day. 3 of the 4 times, Kevin went out with me, and we kind of tag teamed the neighborhood. The unfortunate thing about Priestley is, people just weren't answering their door, as with many of the cases that Chris had as well. We did have a few people that were very adamantly opposed for their own reasons, and that's okay. No one's condemning that at all. The other portion of Priestley is there's a language barrier in many of the homes on Priestley. So when you would have an older person, I'm not calling anyone old, just older, that owned the home, that doesn't speak English, then the younger folks couldn't interpret that to them as to what we were trying to convey. And I'm a professional by trade. I know how to speak to people in multiple different ways, using English, of course, to try and get the same point across. But I struggled to get them to understand what we were trying to do. We had this with an HOA issue when we were working on some amendments. The situation was the person who lived directly, catty corner from me, didn't understand when I was pointing to put it on my white car. They didn't understand that. So the language barrier is a concern. We can go out again. I'm not opposed to it. I'll spend all day and all night doing that.
I don't imagine you will. As somebody who's knocked a lot of doors in the city over the last 7 years, I completely understand how not everyone is home, and even if they are home, they're not home for you.
That's right.
When you're knocking. What I would like to do with that regard is, just specifically for Priestley and Marble Park, is we'll go ahead and send some letters out to those residents, and then I'll work with Boone Paccarel, our councilman, for certain parts of language barrier, if it's part of the Bhutanese community that live there that might have some difficulties with that, to try and shore that up so everybody's aware of it. And that's something that we can do on our end. But that was, of all the numbers, that was the one that concerned me the most, is the lack of response for Priestley. But again, the context helps a lot, and that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd be
And
happy to
printing
go
them.
out with whoever the interpreter is. That
Okay.
way, there's a representative from the community.
Oh, absolutely.
As well as from the government.
That's easy enough.
Thank you.
And did I understand you saying that you would be sending them out in their respective language, not in English, for some of those people, or maybe multiple languages?
It depends on, while Google Translate can be a wonderful thing, it is incredibly inaccurate, specifically with the Bhutanese and the number of dialects that are there for that particular instance. So what we would probably do is we would have the English version with it, and then we would probably translate almost as a flowing conversation with it at that point in time. Usually, Councilman Paccarel is very good about any number of those kind of challenges when it comes to language barriers and things like that. And he can reach out to the individuals specifically in the native tongue that would be easier than, any translated service all the way across.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next, please. State your name.
I'm Gary Demont. I do live on Priestley, and I do not answer my door, sorry. I'm mixed. I know the speed is definitely an issue, and it does concern me. I do not like speed bumps, period. Now, the raised sidewalks, that to me looks a lot better, serves the same function. Like I said, hopefully not decrease the property value. The raised intersections, great idea. But again, if you're not going to put something in between the intersection, especially when there's a longer stretch, you might as well not do it at all. So you're going to have something in between for those longer stretches of roads between the intersections, like a raised sidewalk.
But what Brett is saying, that where we put the flashing stop signs,
Mm.
then doing the raised sidewalks would be of an additional benefit at those locations.
Well, not at the location of the stop sign, but like I said, in between, you do a tabletop at your intersection, that's going to slow them down at the intersection. But as soon as they're past it, if there's nothing in between that and Wagner, they're going to open it up again, right?
You need to have some speed humps
Speed something,
in
yes.
between that'll,
Speed tables in between.
Well, I would, like I said, I don't like bumps, I don't necessarily like humps, but if you do a table,
Yeah.
like a raised crosswalk table, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, that would be way more acceptable than a speed bump,
Well, the
or
humps-
even a hump.
the humps are basically the same premise as the table.
Uh-huh.
They're spread out over a 10-foot area.
Yep, and I understand what the humps
that-
are, I've driven over many of them in my lifetime, and again, that, to me, that's just like a speed bump. I think it's gonna detract from property value, where the raised crosswalk in between the intersections will have the same effect, but yet will look and appear a lot nicer and have a less of an impact on the value of our homes, I believe.
So
My
you're,
humble opinion.
so if I understand right, if we had those at the Quarry Park Priestley intersection, or down at the other streets coming off of Quarry Park, having raised sidewalks across Quarry Park, would be that version of a raised area to be slowing down. And it's
Yeah,
a
but
crosswalk.
my understanding in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, because I may have misunderstood, I thought the intersections were talked about being a table, the whole intersection, not just the crosswalk.
Yes.
But in between that, there needs to be something, and I don't want a speed bump. I would prefer to see a raised crosswalk, but not at the intersection, in between, right?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, typically, when you see the speed tables, they are at the intersections, and it's 3 to 5 feet out from the intersections as you come to the approach. And I get what you're saying, that especially if you're looking at the turn around Quarry Park, and if you're, before you get to Windriff, or even if you're going up the other side, there's a couple of those bends that's where people pick up the speed the most, from what I've been told, from what the residents have said. And you would have to have something in those areas that would provide that same incentive to slow down.
And I've seen cars pass, cars that are doing the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit,
Yes.
closer to Wagner too, because once they take that turn off Wagner onto Priestley, it doesn't take them very long and they're up to speed. So this is what I'm saying, you need more than just the raised
Something
at the intersections. You need something in between, and I don't like the appearance or the effects of a speed bump. But if you put a crosswalk somewhere going from one side of the street to the other, a raised crosswalk, to me, you still have to slow down for that, but it has a much nicer appearance than just a bump or a hump.
And I will say that, and that'd be something that we'd probably have to have the administration check into between the city attorney and our city engineer. I know the Ohio Traffic Control Manual particularly does not recommend mid-block crosswalks. which is where I was saying the speed table. Let me ask, have any of you folks ever driven up Idlewild Drive from Livingston Avenue?
Behind you.
If you go down to Livingston Avenue and Idlewild and come north, Columbus has a number of speed humps there. If you've never seen one particularly and want to go and experience one, go check those out. And is there anyone else that wants to speak
Yes.
before I go any further?
And we have two people.
My name is Carolyn Hoy. I live on Sandrock Avenue. My biggest concern is Sandrock's going to open up from the new development. And I live about halfway up, just halfway up fast enough for everybody to get their speed up and go down and take the curve at Corey Park really quickly. It's going to be a huge concern. We don't know how traffic's going to be affected, but it's going to be affected for sure. We have 3 little kids living next door. You know, one of them's going to get hit if we're not careful. We walk early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and cars are speeding at 4 o'clock in the morning. Motorcycles are speeding at 4 o'clock in the morning, going up through there. I'm a little concerned if you put raised crosswalks up, that's an invitation for people to walk across the street, not an invitation to stop or slow down.
And that's part of the reason why the Ohio Traffic Control Manual discourages mid-block crosswalks.
Exactly. I have been walking down Priestley with my dogs and been verbally assaulted, just like they have, for telling people, hey, you forgot to stop. Or, please slow down. You know, we don't walk down Priestley anymore. It's too dangerous. Trees are hit. People lose control. My husband and I were walking really early one morning on a Sunday, and I don't know how fast the guy was going, but I thought for sure he was going to end up in a house. It's a dangerous street to walk on. It can be a dangerous street to drive on. We've seen school buses passed with flashing lights on. So it's a street that needs some attention,
What
as
do
well
you-
as Sandrock, for sure.
What do you think of having stop signs instead of yield signs on those side streets coming onto Quarry
I don't think
Park?
it'll matter. I mean, I stop and I make sure everybody behind me stops, because I don't move until they stop. Sorry if I offended any of you all doing that, but it's important. I mean, you gotta send a message. My friend lives on the corner of Corey Park and Priestley. And if you sit in her front yard, Mr. Mayor, I know you said that it's the people that live in Corey Park. I disagree. If you sit there, I bet 60% of the people are going straight through. It just is. And if you sit at the corner of Dickens and Priestley, same thing. People don't stop. So some kind of intervention has to happen, or our firefighter is going to take somebody away on a stretcher. And we don't want that. We don't want that at all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yeah, Ted Barnish. I've lived at Priestley for 21 years. It's been a problem since the beginning of the inception of our wonderful community. We love it here. It's been a problem, big problem. We've addressed it with McLeod. Obviously, we're still here 21 years later. Something's got to be done. Car totaled in front of my house, my niece's. Mailboxes destroyed. My car, it's in the parking lot. It's got 3 stripes, bumper. It's been hit 4 times in the last year and a half. Something's got to be done. Got to help us out. They fly by. I've had motorcycles pass me in the morning going to work at 5:30 in the morning. I've had cars pass me during the day. My wife's had cars pass her during the day. She's been assaulted by a gentleman that lives up farther than us and scared her to death. on a school morning when kids are waiting for the bus. This guy passed her. Something's got to be done. You got to help us out. Please. My kids are growing. Thank God they're still here. I don't want anybody's kid to get hit, anybody's pet. It was my dog that ran out. You know, our fault a little bit, but the kid was doing 35, 40 miles per hour. Didn't even stop. So please help us out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please state your name.
Allison Clem. I live on Quarry Park Drive. As a kid and a student, our main concern for the things that we do in our daily lives are the school buses. Now, they go fast all the time. I remember being on the bus and we'd stop and we'd go flying out. Now, the main problem, though, is that when you have 20-plus kids on this bus and you're going super fast versus the emergency vehicles would slow down even though they have someone dying in their back, that makes no sense to me. Like, none at all. We would cross the road, too, and we'd always have to double-check, even when you're in the middle of crossing, to see if there's a car coming. Because they don't stop, especially on my street. Also, I ride my bike all the time, recently during cooler weather. Cars, of course, are right behind me all the time. It's having to check, make sure if I can hear them. And I don't want to have to live in constant fear of trying to cross the road or simply just trying to do a, joyful thing as riding my bike. I've also had friends where their mailboxes have been hit multiple times. One friend, it was like 2 times maybe within a month. It's crazy. And then, as they were saying, a light post was hit, my neighbor down the road. I mean, why can't they control themselves? Especially when you have a neighborhood where there's a bunch of kids and pets and a bunch of elderly also, because they're going to be slower or they're not going to pay attention. So why can't people be mindful of the fact that there are other people besides themselves?
It's a good statement for more than just traffic and speeding. That extends beyond. Again, just to make sure everybody's aware, and I'm going to stand up because I can only see like 3 of you. Okay. Just to make it clear that we're going to go ahead and put this through. So what we'll do is in process, while we're trying to finish up the Priestley numbers, just for making sure everybody's on the same page, we'll go ahead and start issuing some engineering documents to try and figure out what's going on for these particular areas. I figure we're going to have some time to reconvene and then come back, because I'll have them look and sketch out some things that are both speed tables, speed humps, speed bumps, to see what the locations would be, what they would look like, and maybe do some physical representations of it, so that way everybody can at least see what the differences might be and what the locations might be. And then at that point in time, the next step would be to figure out what exactly goes where and in front of whose home, and then have those individual conversations with those homeowners, because while I know a couple of you said you would welcome it in front of your home, I don't know if that's going to be the case for every other person in there. So we have to figure out what the statistics are as far as how far apart everything would be placed and things of that nature. We are in the process of doing budgeting right now, so this is not going to be a difficult thing to put into the budget. However, I can tell you that budget is, I can ask for everything. The rest is up to council. And trust me, I've asked for everything. So when we get that part to the budget in there, it'll be in the roads program and the service department budget. And it'll probably be a very specific line item so people can kind of keep track of what goes on there. But we'll have that up there and council can comment on it. So I ask that when we do present to council, probably, I would say my goal is to have it the first meeting of November, the first Monday, or the second Monday in November. I would probably ask some of you to come here and speak on behalf of that to show your support for this particular project. Again, I can ask. It doesn't always mean that I get everything that I want. So just kind of making sure that everybody's aware of that. Otherwise, I do applaud it. I do understand the frustration about how things have taken as long as they have, but hopefully we can get this on the budget and get it put in, right after the ground thaws, or whatever the engineers, say is the best time to put these kind of improvements in, all the way as early as the spring of next year.
Thank you very much for your support, Mayor.
Oh.
Sorry, there's one thing we forgot. On Priestley, there used to be parking on both sides of the street. That slows cars down. is there any way that while we're waiting for these speed bumps or speed tables to be put in, to maybe put certain parts where we can, if there's a curve, allow people to park there, because people have to slow down. It
Okay, so
works.
you're talking on, so one side of the street obviously is, so you're saying be able to park on that side just to slow
Yeah.
some of the issues up?
Be able to park on both sides of the street. Doesn't have to be all the way down the street, but certain sections, say, 50 feet here, maybe 50 feet
Yeah,
more.
let's get together and get a couple of addresses so we can go in between, so I can at least notify RPD, so if they're driving out and they see cars parked in that particular area, they know that those are not falling under those same considerations. I would hate to do this and then all of a sudden people get parking tickets.
Right, but that'd be something that would help slow them down while we're waiting on the process to go through. So-
If I'm not mistaken, there was a reason that the fire department or some medical issue came up where it would block the street or something when you had parking on both sides in certain locations.
All right, so I was actually out on Starlight, just on, not too far really from the other side of Priestley on the Taylor Road side. And there's two very sharp corners in that area, and it was going through the same process that we're doing here. I went door to door, starting to put some things out there and some suggestions because of that same concern. When I talked to a couple of members of the West Licking Fire Department, and again, I have not talked to Turo specifically about this, they said that they could easily just move those cars, basically politely probably plow through them if that was the case, and they probably wouldn't even have an issue with that. That being said, obviously, we want to make sure that everybody's aware of that, and especially, during snow season, obviously, we'd have to make sure that they're off just to get the plows through as far as that goes. Now, I do want to ask a couple of questions specifically, and I'm not trying to dampen anybody's spirits with this. Obviously, we're going to move forward, but my question is, what if all of these things that we do don't work? And I'm not saying that they will or they won't, but I'm just curious I don't know what the ultimate end would be if all of a sudden we put the speed tables or speed humps or something like that, and there's limited differences in what goes on. I still think it's worthwhile. I still think we move forward with this and all of that. I just want to make sure that that's the case, that everybody's aware that, we have no idea. I don't know what the end result would be.
I had another person give a viewpoint at our council meeting, or our HOA meeting, that said, if we were as strict as Graham Road is with the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, ticketing anybody who was doing what they did on Graham, everybody goes on Graham, slows down. There's a pattern of habit that you're hitting the pocketbooks, and if you would make Priestley a same mannerism of ticketing, that you just get a ticket, period. I believe a lot of the people who live in that area that would abuse it would immediately start taking that street very serious. But that was what a person who's not here tonight wanted to express, that in addition to whatever else is being done, if you could do that, that would be a major impact on Priestley and Quarry Park.
And everybody who signed the petition is not going to come at the mayor's office and yell at me for all the speeding tickets, right? We're all in agreement with that. Okay, just making sure. No, that's fine. No, it's not for you. No, I completely understand. We can combine those instances, because we talked even before about trying to figure out a way to reduce even the speed limit from 25 to 15, which we are not allowed to do. But we did investigate that aspect of things. But I know that the police would probably never admit on record that there's usually a speed limit and then there's a few mile buffer in between 25 and something else. If there was no buffer in that area or something else, then that might be something that would be more of a further incentive. I know that Councilman Stacey Baker is looking to actually increase some of the fines for speeding in residential areas as well. That's actually going to be on a work session on at the next council meeting, so that could probably go in combination with those two things.
Just to piggyback on something you said about the cars with the fire trucks,
Mm-hmm.
we had the same incident where I work, and I asked the chief, I said, what do we do if we got a report of a fire, people trapped? He said, take the cars out.
Yeah.
There's a reason fire trucks have big bumpers, and they work.
Yeah, I didn't think that would be ultimately, no one's going to stop and, get out and try and knock on doors to have somebody move their car.
No,
Yeah.
we're going through them, so
Okay.
that works.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
Next, sir.
Really hate masks. You asked about other things we can look at.
Your name, sir, please?
Oh, Les Davies, I live on Sandrock. I live on the lucky end that right now is a dead end, and I'm Joe knows this, I'm very unhappy about the crap new development that's going in there, because it's going to open up our street, and it's also going to create more traffic on Priestley, which is what we do not need. So, I mean, that's just, it's going to add to the problem. But some other things to look at, I think. We had, from time to time, the signs that say, you're going this fast. And it flashes and says, slow down, or it says, thank you. If we could maybe have some of those signs, and I don't know if these signs are capable of recording data, such that we may have some quantitative data then to say, we have this much traffic that's going too fast. It may help the officers to target the area, so they'll know that we seem to have a lot of speeding in these hours. And another option too, I would think of, in addition to these signs, is that if they're capable of photographing a license plate. And we may not be able to have them a fine, but we may know who it is that is doing this.
I did speak to the city attorney on that second part, and that was probably not going to be something that occurs in residentials.
Come on now.
I know, he does, follow that particular law. The data that you have has been presented, and I believe even at your last HOA meeting, there was a number of sheets there that RPD had provided with it.
Right.
And again, it's going to be one of those things where it's hit or miss. If the tracker is in the right place during the right week or the right 2 weeks or however it is, it's going to show data that confirms it. But most of the data that we had seen at that point in time, you had a couple of outliers of speed, but not necessarily the ones on the consistent basis. And it's a crapshoot. It honestly would be, it just depends on that particular week's travels all the way through. But there was never anything that was significantly consistent enough, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we can't have one of those out there that can do some consistent tracking all the way.
Well, and, maybe something a little more permanent, that
Yeah,
would be an idea. Something else too to try, I mean, speed bumps are great, speed humps are great. My wife texted me some information a few minutes ago that said that Akron saw a 23% reduction in speeding when they installed speed humps. So if that can happen, that'll be at least 23% better than what we have now. I've tried myself driving down Priestley for a period of time, just driving back and forth, 25 miles an hour.
So he says.
To see, if I'm slowing people down, when I stop at the stop signs, I stop, I count to 3, and then I go. And perhaps those of us who live in the neighborhood who are driving can continually do this, where we're slowing traffic down, we stop, we count to 3, maybe drive up and down Priestley for a little while and see if we can help in that way. But, this is a step in the right direction. I fully support the speed bump or speed hump, whatever we decide to do. And I'm sure at some time we'll be looking at that on Sandrock too, unfortunately. But I do have a young boy who does sometimes not look real carefully when he runs out. He is autistic. And I know that with with autism, you tend to not have a great sense of the danger. You don't perceive these things. And this is a great risk. So I just want to, I support that. I support any other measures we can take as well. Anything we can put on the table to slow these people down and to make sure that we're stopping at the stop signs.
Thank you.
If they're looking at increasing fines, is there a mechanism so we can create perhaps a neighborhood safety zone? This is a designated enforcement area for neighborhood safety, and create perhaps a safety zone up and down Priestley and Quarry Park
Right.
Drive that notifies them that we're looking out for you.
We would volunteer our area to be established as that.
I'll look into that.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Leslie?
Mr. Mayor, you had asked earlier about what, if the speed bumps, speed humps don't work, what would we want as our next step? And I can speak for 7910 Priestley. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't think anyone here knows, or else we'd be asking for that now. We're happy to get whatever we can get, as long as it is effective. And if it's not, then we meet back here in however many years. So I very much appreciate you asking that, but I don't think anyone in this room.
Oh, I wasn't looking for an answer on that
No, I
question.
figured as
Yeah.
much, but I do want to piggyback on the on the passing. While I was out on 2 Sundays ago, I was walking Priestley, eastbound on Priestley. I had just passed, are you on Windrift? I had just passed Windrift, sorry. I know where Fred lives, I don't remember the street. I had just passed that, and that's where that three-way stop is. I had watched 4 people, well, there was a 5th. 4 people originally stop at that stop sign, again going eastbound on Priestley. The 5th one came up, ran through the stop sign, proceeded, because our property starts pretty much right after that stop sign on the left, they proceeded, that 5th car proceeded to, I say leapfrog, pass 4 cars in consecutive action. So the passing, though with speed bumps or speed humps, hopefully might slow down some. We don't know, of course, but again, it's a big problem, the speed, of course, and the passing. So if the officers could come out, we've offered our driveways up.
Oh, it wasn't for lack of having places to go. I think most of the residents have.
Everybody on Priestley would, well, not everybody, because we can't get a hold of everybody, but there's plenty of access. We'll give them all the water and bathroom breaks they need. We're happy to help them with that, whatever the officers need.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I think there's a point too where a number of people may perceive that if someone is going a certain speed on the street, that unless there's a sign that says no passing, that they have the right to pass.
I think there's a number of combinations. I was talking with a couple of members of RPD and just in general. Most of us in here, not all, but most of us in here, we took our driver's education courses in school, and it was one of those things that was constant. One thing that I've noticed with, and I'm going to really hate saying this, the younger generation, a lot of people wait until they are 18 and then just take the test and then move on with it. And it's not necessarily the same thing. And there are differences with that. And I think that's also something that's leading to a lot of the lack of courtesy, the lack of understanding, the lack of everything with that. Now, that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. We have to deal with it. But it was just an interesting concept that a few of the officers had mentioned to me.
Yeah, and I know when you're out on a country road, there will be a yellow line or 2 yellow lines, but if the sign doesn't say no passing, then people still pass. And a lot of people feel that that's an acceptable passing zone. Maybe an additional thing that could easily be done readily now would be to put up on Priestley and on Corey Park, no passing signs, along with the speed sign. That may start making people question that they do not have a right to pass around the slower moving cars. Because some people, like you said, may have that technical thing that says, well, unless it says it, I can do it, as an example.
Okay.
It's a possibility, and I don't want to throw cold water on any of the suggestions because I agree with everybody. We need to have something done. I don't know if you folks know, I actually retired as the street superintendent. I was the one that took the guardrail down that opened that road up when I worked for the street department. So when I say that I know this is an ongoing issue, believe me, I've been the one out there putting up signs, putting up stop signs, putting up no parking signs. One of the things that I started to say before, if you folks don't know exactly what a speed table is, Columbus has a number of them on Idlewild that runs between Main Street and Livingston Avenue. If you've never driven over one, I'd suggest you go over there and see what they do. They do slow traffic down. They are not nearly as obtrusive as a speed bump is. They don't make near the noise. They don't hinder emergency vehicles. They can still let the snow plows and everything else do their work. They have to slow down a little bit, but they can still do their work. So if you are not sure which you would prefer, I suggest you go take a look at those. They do make a big difference. One of the other things I was going to suggest to the mayor, in your budget, you might take a look at temporary speed bumps, speed humps They are something that we can actually try and see which works the best. And the residents can get an idea of which one they like the best before we go to the expense of putting in the permanent ones. Yes, Leslie?
Sir, to address your thoughts as to if people understand what the difference between a speed hump and a speed bump is, and forgive me, I did not bring the photos, but the mayor's office was kind enough to provide us with photos of each item, the table and the bump. Did it give them a live view of what each one was? Certainly not, but it was a color photo that I had printed off in color to help, really drive the point home. So the folks that did sign the petitions saw both, because I put them in plastic sleeves, one on one side, one on the other, because that's how my brain works, so that we could just flip it over. This is this one, and this is this one. So the folks that did sign did see photos, 8.5 by 11 photos of each option when they were signing that
Are we
petition.
talking the speed bump, speed hump, and speed table?
The speed table and the speed bump.
Because the hump is not near as wide as the speed table is.
But
I
the
think when we-
speed hump was not included on the.
No,
on the
it was
petition.
more just the other two. I think like I said, once we get the engineer drawings and we can actually have schematics and then bring people back together again and have this, and then we'll actually be able to put them up on the big screen and actually show the locations and things like that. And I think that'll make it clarity before any decisions there. And we'll have the budgetary options for permanent and temporary as well.
Yeah, 'cause what is on Idlewild is a speed hump. The table goes up and flattens out and then goes back down, so,
Yes, sir, thank you.
okay.
So, oh,
New Albany. Kind of a pass through.
Yeah.
Broad, you can take a left and run through that neighborhood.
Do they?
okay.
That's Reynoldsburg too, right?
No.
Kind of, but not really. It's one of those by zip code only.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't been through there since, that used to be one of my ways to get through on my salt route, and they didn't have them there at that time, so.
Well, I guess they put them there because of that. There's an accident.
Yeah, it's a cut through. I agree with you.
Well, if there's, like I said, we'll get this together, and I would like to think that by the next time we have our meeting sometime, after either the first or second meeting in October, we should have at least a general idea, if not some schematics to discuss and show before we move to the next step for the budgeting phase.
And I just want to thank everybody for coming out here. Like I said, don't think you are being ignored. We have been discussing different options for Priestley in particular from our first meeting on, so. I said, so we're not ignoring you. It's just a matter of trying to get the pieces to fit to try to make everyone happy.
Moving at the
Now,
speed
you're
of
not going to
government.
make everyone happy, guaranteed, so.
Well, you're more than welcome to stay. We're going to talk about the all-exciting roundabouts real quick if you want to stay. Oh, look at all the happy faces.
I don't see anybody jumping up and running to the door yet, though.
I'll just kind of go briefly. We did have a discussion. We had a roundabout town hall. The primary topic was the five-way roundabout. So after that meeting and reading the wonderful commentary on social media, it seems that half of the city thinks that roundabouts are the next greatest thing in the world, and the other 50% think that roundabouts will be the end of all civilization. And there really wasn't a lot of in-between either way. However, I think what we should do as the city is get an update in '22 of the traffic safety update for the five-way and get more up-to-date numbers. The last numbers that were provided for us was based on 2018, 2017, 18 data, and I think that's the first data set that would be. And then at that point, I think presenting that information to council sometime next year after that's complete We are not going to be in a rush. They will not have an application available to apply for, from what we're being told, until at least 2023. However, if we have all of our ducks in a row ahead of time and continue to get as much public comment on this particular issue as we can, then at that point, if the community and council decide to move forward with a roundabout at that particular location, then it won't, the logistics and, the procedural stuff will be out of the way, and then it will just be up to the community and council to make that particular decision. So that was kind of my update after our town hall that we had about a month ago or so.
And just to let everyone know, the discussion about a roundabout actually occurred, Ken, you may know even a little bit more. It's a number of years ago. There were a couple of different designs that were brought up. Most people think of a traditional roundabout being round. There was also another drawing that I refer to it as a peanut, that I don't know if the engineers think it would work any better or not. I personally think it would. Like I said, my background is streets. But it's something that the engineers and different things would have to take a look at it. And we'd have to look at crash data and different things for that intersection before it would even be prudent to, try to move on with it. Like I said, Ken may have a little bit better idea of. Yeah, ODOT actually.
Did identify definitely qualified for funding. Our 2020, but now that our solution, so. But they're not any good. Not assigned.
So that'll be the next direction that we're going to go for that particular one. I believe the town hall should still be listed somewhere in the ether on Facebook if you want to go back and see some of those particular pictures with that. The only other items, unless there's something else about roundabouts?
It's not about roundabouts, but it is an existing condition. The middle school on Wagoner Road, when you're coming from Broad Street, you cannot see the 20-mile-an-hour sign.
A resident has noted, yeah,
responsible for tree
we're
trimming?
in the process of we were notified about that the other day, so it's just getting somebody out there with the shears to go ahead and clean that one particular area up.
Thank you.
I did also include, for those of you that came in and picked up the agenda, our 2022 proposed road program. Again, I'm going to stand up because I can't see anybody. The program these are the roads that have been identified as the most needed needed of repair all the way throughout. This is the rough estimate from the engineers about what it would cost. So now that once it goes through council, they'll do the survey work and they'll get an approximation of how much that would cost to go ahead and fix all of the roads on that particular list. It would also be part of our new sidewalk program, so if you're on that particular road, then if your sidewalks need repaired, that would also be part of it. Now, this does not mean that every road on that list is going to get done. What we're going to do is we'll get the final total, and then we will look at our budget and then try and place some jigsaw puzzles to figure out how many, what the maximum amount of roads that we can get with the budget that we will have for next year. We hope to have all of this back by the end of December, and then we hope to put it out to bid early January, so that way this year, I think most of the residential roads started in June of this year and got done. So examples, just go further up Priestley at the county line, and you can see what the difference is between those. A couple of ones that I know that were on the list this year but did not make the cut are Canada Cord, Cuthbert, Virginia, Gladys, and I know those are the ones. And then Taylor Road Southwest is also one that was on the list this year. That is probably the most expensive of all of the roads that are on there. So this is where William Dorman, our service director, and I are going to work our magic as far as budgeting to make sure we get those and as many of the other roads that are listed there done as possible. We hope that once we get our website up and running as far as a brand new website, residents will not only see what's coming up, that current year, but also potentially to 2 years out, so they have an idea of what those roads are. Again, we hope to have all of them done, but again, this year we saw that there was a little bit of a shortfall, and mostly because the city does get a number of dollars from the gas tax that helps us to actually allow to fix roads, but last year apparently nobody was driving for some reason. I don't know, maybe you heard about it. But this year I think it'll be a little bit different, so we're going to wait for those numbers and try and get as many of those done as we can as we get ready to already move into the 2022 era on everything. There's also some other things in there that are preventative maintenance. One of the things that the city, for whatever reason, had not done in the past are taking care of the roads that were, done in the past to try and extend their life. So instead of, say, a 20-year life, maybe preventative maintenance in the first 3 to 5 years would allow for an additional 5 years of life, maybe more in there. So part of it would be what they call a sealing. So you may have seen on Taylor Road and a few other ones in Priestley, Taylor Road this year, where they almost put like a film of some sorts. They seal it all the way across, and that just helps kind of secure it a little bit more. There was some crack sealing that was done on Lancaster earlier this year as well to help that. And those are preventative maintenance issues that Service Director William Dorman has put in place for this budget. Because again, it's one thing to fix them, but the idea is to make sure that we fix them and we fix them right and keep them in good shape all the way. So a lot of that budget is involved in that as well. But those are the big issues for 2022, in addition to finishing off East Main Street, which I promise one day will be done. I'm not saying what day, but one day it will be done. And then after that's done, then we're going to be moving into the Wagner Road project. For those of you, I know somebody mentioned, coming off of Wagner Road onto Priestley. We did submit our OPWC grant application this week. We feel that it is going to score very well, and hopefully sometime around Christmas this year, we'll have a response on that. It's a little bit different this time around than in the past because of the way that the application was submitted and the number of, I guess you'd say, financial contributors. Obviously, the MI development is contributing money. The Franklin County Engineers Office is actually donating 10% of the total cost of the project, which is $1.7 million. The total cost will be about 17, so they put that in there. Turtle Township has promised a $10,000 contribution into that as well, and those all actually add up to points in addition to the school district and some of the churches in the area also sending in letters of support. So we feel pretty confident about how this will go, and that first part of it will begin at Priestley and move to Main Street. Now, whether they start at the Main Street side or the Priestley side, I don't know yet. We'll wait to figure that one out, but we'll have some more specific engineering drawings. But the one thing for Priestley that will be there is there will be a stoplight at Priestley, and then there'll be a little median center as you come into Priestley, so that way when people are trying to make that really quick turn to avoid the other traffic, they'll have a stoplight, so it'll be there, and then they're going to have a median, which means they're going to have to be a little bit more conscious of their maneuvering. So hopefully they will not have the opportunity to just gun it after that, and then by the time that happens, we'll have whatever speed table, speed bump, something along those lines as well. So we'll get a lot of that stuff taken care of. And I do agree, it's not just Wagner Road, it's not just Priestley, it's also enforcement, it's also, the speed. It's a lot of different things that go all the way across. So over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a lot of improvements in that particular area. Chair Lozada?
Yeah, just a couple things on your street program. And I've talked to you about this before. Would it be possible to look at that little stretch down here at the end of Davidson, between Davidson and Half, that didn't get done when Davidson was finished?
Yeah, it's on a list in there. We were hoping that we would actually be able to snag it at the end of the street project this year.
And the other one, and I noticed east out here when they did from Licking County on east on Main Street, all the striping out there is plastic, but everything in the Franklin County portion is paint. Is there,
It's the same company that did it, so I can't imagine why there would be two different versions.
it's, yeah, I don't think it's temporary. I think it's all done. They're putting in the turn lane arrows and everything else. So-
Okay.
But yeah, everything on the Franklin County portion is paint. I don't know if it's something that maybe got overlooked in the two different districts from.
I can't imagine the
from
two
ODOT.
counties not talking to each other. That would be crazy.
But-
Yeah, I'll follow up, and we'll follow up with Kokosing on that.
And then one other thing, if you could, I don't know, it might be something more along Mr. Dorman's line. At the council meeting Monday night, he started to go into a little bit about what's being planned for Broadwin between Lancaster and Graham Road.
Yes.
Can
I
you
can
elaborate
speak-
on that just a little bit?
Yeah, and again, without getting, the graphics and the designs out, there was some water work that was done, some stormwater work that was done a number of years ago, and then all of a sudden it kind of just stayed there, and so there've been issues. When you go on Broadwin, as you're headed towards basically Hannah Ashton Middle School from Graham Road, there's no curbs at all, and then actually part of the road itself, it seems that had been raised over a number of years, and so you actually have fire hydrants out in the middle of part of the street. And so when we actually took a tour of that earlier this year to kind of identify certain roads that would be there, we looked at that, and Director Dorman is looking to actually kind of try to find ways to enhance that particular area, and for lack of a better way of saying, make it look pretty with some of the street trees and things like that, because it is in that old historic part. The only thing we have to do is continue to kind of coordinate with the school district. I did tell the residents when I was out on Broadwin that we aren't going to touch Broadwin until we have a guarantee from the school district that if the bond issue that's up right now passes, the construction traffic and all of that is going to stay off of Broadwin, because I'm not going to spend, it's a pretty hefty penny over there to all of a sudden have construction vehicles building, a potential new pre-K case center on there. So once we got that assurances, that's why Broadwin's on the list. We just wanted to make sure that that would be taken care of. But it's going to be more of a beautification as well as the street project as well.
Part of the reason those fire hydrants and all are out in the street is that actually used to be a gravel section in between the sidewalk and the road. There were actually trees in between the sidewalk and the road, not like we have on Priestley in between the curb and the sidewalk. They were actually out in the parking area that people would park right up next to them. And a number of years ago, they actually just bumped the blacktop all the way over to the sidewalk. So, and that's part of the history of what happened over there. One other thing I would like to do, and I'm like to turn this over to Ken. Ken works for an engineering firm, and he's been doing a lot of, I shouldn't say investigation, but he's had a lot of different discussions with some other people in his firms. And they've been talking about a thing that's called Vision Zero in small communities. So I'd like to maybe let Ken just discuss just a little bit about what that entails. It might be something the city would be interested in.
Taking a look at this, I haven't gotten too much into it. Our,
Yeah, can you pull it? Is it on? Green light on?
Should be a little green light.
There we go. Better? Yeah, it went off on me. Yes, so Vision Zero is a worldwide movement, and the zero means zero fatalities and injuries, which is the goal. Obviously, that's not ever going to be reached. But there's now a few dozen cities in the United States that are taking part in this Vision Zero, and they're trying to move it into local communities and small communities now. And I didn't know how small they were talking, but I talked to our traffic safety engineer. Now, she said that they just did the project. She lives in DC, and they just did some Vision Zero projects there. And she said it's a pleasure now to get around there. Now, she said that I gave her the information for Reynoldsburg. I gave her our traffic data that I got from ODOT. Demographics for the area, number of people, and that. She said she thinks it's a perfect place to incorporate something like Vision Zero. Just quickly, and I'll give you some information, Mayor, on this. But quickly, she said that it doesn't take a whole lot of input on our part. I mean, it's just pretty much a task force, get the fire department, the police department, EMS together, along with the city government, and just determine a nice wish list of what we need to do. Do a quick traffic analysis, see where there's problem spots, which is pretty much already done, and then just apply for the funding. There is a program called the Crash Analysis Program, which I've sent around, that ODOT has provided, and I've already pulled the information for Reynoldsburg. And there are a number of places that could use some work that could be centered or helped out by this program. I guess the biggest help right here that it can offer us is that ODOT has funding for all this. ODOT has an abbreviated funding program for small projects. That's under $250,000. Usually there has to be a safety study, and you could be, talking years, 2023, 2025, before any funding can be approved. For these small projects, there's an abbreviated application, and there's a fast-track funding for all these under $250,000 projects. So again, I have to look into this a little more, but this might be something that we could look into for Priestley. A small job like that might be able to be funded pretty quickly. That quickly for ODOT is going to be a year, but
That's pretty fast for ODOT.
yeah.
No, that's absolutely, send me what you have and
And
we'll have.
Yeah, and then,
I already know the
people-
perfect person to work on this.
I just want, people to know, we are doing stuff. I mean, the city is, I'm really impressed with the way the city is responding to Priestley Drive, because they're looking at ODOT's crash data. There's a lot more places in Reynoldsburg that deserve attention, probably more than Priestley, based on their injuries and fatalities. But the city's really responded to us, and there has been a lot of work going on. You might not see it, might not seem like it, but there's been a couple public meetings. The mayor's come to the HOA meeting. He's sent personal letters out to everybody on the street. That's not something that you're going to see everywhere. So your voices are being heard, and stuff like this is really helpful. Come to the meetings. If you can't watch the meeting on Facebook, spread the word to your neighbors. Just let people know what's going on, and keep being vigilant on Priestley. If your neighbors are the ones speeding, let them know. If you see somebody, go ahead and yell at them. I wouldn't recommend rolling a skateboard out there. We don't want somebody to get hurt just because they're breaking the law. I mean, that's a little bit too much. But yeah, I live on Priestley and Windrift. I have been working at home since 2020. My office faces the front of the house. So yeah, I get to watch people all day long rolling through that stop sign. I think we did some traffic studies. Most of the speeding problem is what they call perceived, because most of the drivers are sticking between 25 and 30 miles an hour. But you do get people that, flagrantly disregard the law. And we have a motorcycle policeman that sits on the side of my house sometimes. He can't be there all the time. But I've seen him sit there. He stays busy the whole day. He doesn't bother pulling over people who do rolling stops. He doesn't bother pulling people over that just go through without stopping at all. He waits for people who speed through without stopping, and probably gets a nice hefty fine. But we can't have somebody there constantly. Reynoldsburg has 270 lane miles of roadway. The police have better things to do. They don't have the manpower to patrol all that constantly. So we can just do the best we can on our own. But yeah, I'll get that stuff to you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
And I just want to let everybody know, don't hesitate. If you have a question, concern, whatever, if nothing else, send it to the mayor's secretary and she'll forward it to us. We will make sure that whatever it is, it gets it looked into. No problem is too small. And like Ken said, don't think your voices aren't being heard. That's why the mayor's here. He takes his job serious. We aren't actually employees or have jobs here, but we volunteered for this because we care about Reynoldsburg, and we want to see Reynoldsburg to be as safe and successful as it can be. So don't hesitate to send in your concerns and questions. Yep.
And your input's welcome at every one of these meetings, not just about Priestley.
For those of you watching at home on Facebook, too.
Yeah, you can have comments.
Mayor, I have a question on the 2022 program under preventative maintenance. It said the areas for crack seal, rejuvenation, et cetera, are to be determined. When that is to be done, I'd like to be a part of that because I know the streets, even in our area, can really use some preventative maintenance so that they don't deteriorate as fast as some of the other areas. So if it's possible to look at not only just our area, but whenever those areas are to be determined, it would be nice to be a part of that discussion.
With the legislation that just went out, what they'll do is, we had our first reading, we have 2 more to go, 30-day wait period, and then at that point in time, EMH&T will go out and evaluate, and they'll make those recommendations. But we'll let them know just to keep an eye on that, on the Wagner side of Priestley, just to see what that's up to date with.
Thank you, yes, because we want to maintain those until we really need more work done.
And I will say, and I'm sure the mayor can probably confirm this, the street superintendent and the engineer used to go out every year and grade the streets, every street in Reynoldsburg.
Yes.
They used to go out and grade them and, based on a scale of 1 to 5. And, 2 may be just crack sealing and rejuvenation. A 1 is it's in good shape. 5 is it's falling apart. So, and that's what they usually use to gauge what they have for their street program. So.
All right, sounds good.
Are there any other questions, concerns? Speak
Well, I
up
was
now,
just
or you gotta wait
wondering,
till the next meeting.
Did I hear correctly, we were going to get a crosswalk at Priestley and Windriff?
Yeah, as soon as Priestley and Windriff, as soon as we can figure out exactly where that location goes. There's a
Okay.
lot of intricacies at that particular intersection.
Yeah.
So that's just one of
Yeah, I
those
didn't
things.
know if that was going to be done before the first of the school year or not, but.
Yeah, at this point, I'll let you know, I'll have everybody that information sent out to you in the next day or so.
Yeah, and that's one, even with the crosswalk, I recommend that you walk your children there because that's right around that corner.
Yep. All right, our next meeting is September 29th at 7 PM. I do recommend coming back for that one. It's going to be as exciting as always with our arts and beautification, as well as our welcoming and diversity. Arts and beautification are going to talk a lot about some potential Reynoldsburg Arts Commission that may actually be created, and the beautification is always issues to deal with how we can improve just the aesthetic look of the city, from picking up litter to kind of getting updated on what we're doing code enforcement wise. And our Welcoming and Diversity Committee, obviously, we have a number of people here in our community of a very diverse background to make them feel welcome, as well as the residents that are coming in. We have a brand-new community guide that is online, but starting after the first of the year, everyone in the city of Reynoldsburg will be getting a community guide that will have a lot of basic information. It's not just what to call, who to call when your light bulb goes out, but there's a lot of other information in there as well. I do recommend checking it out online. It's a beautiful document. One of our interns from Morpsey actually put it together. She did a fabulous job. And it's going to look fabulous when it's all in your mailboxes this, hopefully sometime probably late January. If that's all for the evening, Chair Luzader, go ahead and close the meeting.
At this time, and if there, one more.
There's always one.
There's always one. It's usually me. I'd just like to thank you, gentlemen. I know you're all volunteers and taking a lot of time and energy and effort to help our community improve, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I had.
And I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. So with that, I will consider this meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe drive home.